The air in the sprawling Ikoyi mansion was thick with expensive perfume and unsaid prayers. Mama Adetola, the formidable founder of the Adetola oil conglomerate, lay still in her mahogany bed, her breathing shallow like the tide receding from the shore. Her two sons, Beo and Femi, paced outside, their forced condolences sounding like dry rustling leaves. Beo, the eldest, adjusted his impeccably tailored agbada, projecting the air of the natural successor, while Femi, the sensitive artist, nervously ran a hand through his hair. Though bound by blood, their rivalry for Mama's approval, and her empire, had been a cold war waged for decades, now reaching its inevitable, high-stakes conclusion. The entire extended family had descended upon the house, their sorrow performative, their greed palpable. They didn't mourn the woman, but the wealth she was about to leave behind, whispered to be enough to purchase half of Victoria Island. Every cousin and aunt watched Beo and Femi, trying to discern which brother would inherit the golden throne. Beo's wife, Busy, a woman whose beauty was only outmatched by her ambition, moved through the crowd with cool, calculating grace. She was Beo's greatest asset, a silent, watchful warrior ensuring that no scrap of the inheritance fell outside their grasp. She knew that her future depended entirely on Beo's assent. The solemn silence was broken by the arrival of Barrister Tond, Momo's longtime confidant and executor of her final wishes. He carried a heavy, sealed envelope, the very sight of which caused a collective sharp intake of breath in the sitting room. His expression was grave, suggesting the contents were far from straightforward. Busy ushered the family into the formal parlor, insisting on a stiff formality that masked her own frantic anticipation. The reading of the will, scheduled for that evening, was not merely a legal procedure, it was the final, decisive battle for the Adetola dynasty's soul, set to begin under the cold gaze of Momo's portrait. Barrister Tond cleared his throat and began, the legal jargon cutting through the tension. The initial bequests were standard, properties, shares, and trusts. Then came the clarity clause, which dictated the main oil conglomerate and the Ikoyi estate would go to the son who fulfilled Mama's last blessing. The clause was not financial, it was deeply personal, baffling the assembled family. To inherit the bulk of the estate, the chosen son must reveal a secret that Mama had guarded for 30 years, a secret so dark it could shatter the family's public image. The secret was sealed in a second, smaller envelope, only to be opened after her funeral. Beo scoffed, regaining his composure first. "This is typical of Momo's dramatics," he sneered, confident that whatever the secret was, his position as the obedient, firstborn son assured his victory. He believed he knew everything about the family history and was the only one capable of maintaining the empire. Femi, however, felt a chill. His mother had often alluded to a hidden sorrow, a tragedy that shadowed their privileged life. He suspected that the last blessing was not a gift, but a moral reckoning that would force one of them to face a harsh truth, something Beo clearly had no intention of doing. The lawyer handed Beo the ornate, wax-sealed envelope containing the core of the condition, stressing that it must remain unopened until the stipulated time. Beo tucked it into his jacket, an almost possessive action, already savoring the victory he believed was rightfully his. He saw it as a mere formality. Meanwhile, Femi watched the interaction with growing unease, feeling excluded and suspicious. He noticed the slight tremor in Barrister Tond's hand and the quick, secretive glance the lawyer exchanged with Busy, Beo's wife, a glance that was far too intimate for a professional acquaintance. Over the next few days, while the household prepared for the elaborate funeral, Femi found himself haunted by the memory of the lawyer's look toward Busy. He recalled Busy's background. She was from a modest, almost obscure family, a stark contrast to Beo's wealth, yet she had married him with remarkable ease. He began digging into Busy's past, finding old newspaper archives his mother had tucked away. Most were society pages, but one clipping was different, a small, forgotten story about a major financial scandal at a rival oil firm 3 decades ago, involving a man named Obinna. The name Obinna was instantly familiar. Mama had occasionally uttered it in hushed, regretful tones when she thought she was alone. The newspaper article mentioned that Obinna, a promising executive, had been framed and ruined, dying shortly after, and his young family vanished. The scandal had directly benefited Adetula Oil, securing its rise. Femi felt a sick lurch in his stomach as he realized the chilling possibility. Their last blessing wasn't a secret about their family, but about the destruction of another, and Mama wanted this old debt settled. But why did Ton and Busy exchange that look? The funeral was a spectacle of wealth and influence, attended by ministers and captains of industry. As Mama's coffin was lowered, the drummer peaked when a frantic, weeping woman, thin and dressed in faded clothing, tried to rush the grave, shouting a name, Obinna. My husband. Beo, furious at the disruption, ordered the security detail to remove her, fearing the damage to the family's reputation. Femi, however, recognized the look in her eyes, raw, unadulterated grief, and felt a deep connection to her sorrow, remembering the old newspaper clipping. That evening, after the mourners left, the two brothers, Busy, and Barrister Ton gathered for the unveiling of the sealed note. Beo, impatient, broke the wax seal with a flourish. The note contained only 2 sentences written in Mama Adetela's elegant script. The secret is that Obinna's son is the only true Adetela heir. To fulfill my blessing, you must find him, transfer the company to him, and compensate his mother. Beo paled, instantly realizing the scale of the betrayal and the decades of lies. Before Beo could react, Femi spoke quietly, his voice tight. Mama left me a separate, small note, which I was to open only if Beo tried to burn the first one. She told me the true heir is not someone to be searched for, but someone already here. He produced a folded piece of paper. The note simply read, Femi, you are not my son. You are Obinna's child. I took you in, raised you, and kept you safe from the men who framed your father. The room descended into stunned silence, the weight of the confession crushing them. The implication was clear. Mama Adetela had spent 30 years repenting for her husband's crimes by raising the victim's son as her own. She knew Beo, her biological son, was too greedy to ever cede control willingly, hence the elaborate condition designed to ensure the true heir received justice. Beo, shaking with rage and humiliation, lunged at Femi, screaming about the lie that had built his entire life. Busy, however, remained unnervingly still, her eyes fixed on the shocked Barrister Ton with a cold, triumphant glint. The biggest twist was still to come. Femi, reeling from the news of his true parentage, focused on the unnatural calm of Busy. He remembered the look, the way she had steered the family, and the sudden realization hit him. Busy wasn't just Beo's wife, she was an enemy operating inside the fortress. You knew, Femi whispered, staring at Busy. Her mask finally slipped, replaced by a sneer of contempt. Of course, I knew. But not about you, artist boy. I knew about the first secret, the Obinna connection, long before Beo did. Busy revealed that she wasn't a random social climber. She was Obinna's niece, sent by her aging, disgraced aunt, the woman from the funeral, to marry into the Adetela family as a form of elaborate, calculated revenge. She had spent years gathering evidence of the original financial frame-up. Barrister Ton, she confessed, had been her secret collaborator. He was Obinna's loyal friend and had watched helplessly as Mama Adetela's late husband, Beo's father, had orchestrated the downfall. Ton had helped Mama craft the will as a final, desperate act of justice. The scandal deepened when Busy, pulling a document from her handbag, explained that her marriage to Beo was a sham. The prenuptial agreement she insisted upon, which Beo had boastfully signed, believing her too unsophisticated to understand it, was a financial tripwire. She explained that if Beo failed to gain the full inheritance due to a contingency in Momo's will, she would be entitled to a massive, non-negotiable settlement from his separate, current assets, enough to bankrupt him instantly. Her greed was the final weapon against the man who represented her family's ruin. Beo, utterly defeated and facing financial devastation, could only stare at his wife's calculated coldness. She had played the perfect trophy wife for years, all while working to dismantle his world piece by piece. His own pride and certainty had blinded him to the snake he had brought into his bed. The last blessing, Femi now understood, was not just the inheritance, it was the public unmasking of the family's foundational lie and the restoration of Obina's name. Mama Adetola, in her final act, had engineered a spectacular, scandalous cleanup of her family's sordid legacy, ensuring justice and revenge in one stroke. Femi, though legally the heir, was torn. He despised the ruthless word of Adetola Oil and felt an overwhelming wave of empathy for the disgraced, now bankrupt Beo. He was Obina's son, but he had been raised with a brother's love, however strained. He held the power to destroy Beo entirely, selling off his remaining assets to fully fund his birth mother's compensation and secure his own reign. The entire extended family waited, their eyes wide with excitement, hoping the new heir would immediately cut them a piece of the pie. Femi, stepping into the center of the room, made his final decision. He announced that he would honor his father Obina's memory, but not through vengeance. He looked directly at Barrister Ton and Busy, acknowledging their role in the complex plan, and spoke with the authority he never knew he possessed. He decreed that the conglomerate would not be dissolved, but reformed under a strict new ethical charter. He pledged to use the company's influence to fund justice initiatives, compensating not just Obina's mother, but also setting up a foundation in his birth father's name, dedicated to ethical business practices. Beo and Busy were left with nothing but their shame and their now void marriage. The scandal quickly became the talk of Lagos high society, ruining the Adetola family's name, but cementing Femi's unexpected, compassionate leadership. He had chosen forgiveness over ruin. Busy, having won her revenge but lost her immediate fortune, left the mansion that same night, taking her documents and her secrets with her, a cold smile on her lips. Beo, stripped of his privilege, was left alone in the vast, empty house, now simply a man and no longer an heir. Femi, the reluctant heir, now ruled the empire he never wanted. He started painting again, his canvases now depicting not sorrow, but the complex beauty of a difficult redemption. He found peace in knowing that his mother's last blessing had succeeded in its true purpose. He had fulfilled the condition not by simply handing over the inheritance, but by using the power to right an old wrong, proving that integrity, not greed, could be the final, most enduring legacy. The artist had become the family's unlikely, scandalous savior.